more than 70% of American families now live in counties where a single paycheck can no longer cover rent and groceries. In city after city, middle-class parents are watching their safety nets snap, not from sudden disaster, but from the quiet daily math of survival. 2 incomes, 2 kids, 0 breathing room. The price of a home that once meant security now feels like a ransom. And the American dream? It's being priced out zip code by zip code. Every year, millions of families cross a breaking point, forced to choose between staying home or staying afloat. The suburbs that once promised comfort are turning into debt traps, and the cities that raised generations are pushing them out one bill at a time. In today's video, we trace the heartbreak spreading from coast to coast. Families packing boxes under flickering kitchen lights, moving not by choice, but by necessity. From Los Angeles to Atlantic City, we'll uncover the 10 places where even stability has become a luxury. Stay with me until the end, because the last city on this list isn't a struggling town. It's a warning for every American family still hanging on. Los Angeles, California. 97.2% of its neighborhoods are now officially unaffordable for the average American family. For decades, Los Angeles was the symbol of possibility, the place where families came to chase sunlight, jobs, and a dream of upward mobility. But by 2025, that promise has inverted. The city that once built the myth of prosperity now forces working parents into survival math. A median home here costs nearly $820,000, while the median household income hovers around $74,000. That means the average family would need to spend more than 60% of their take-home pay just to keep a roof over their heads. Renters fare no better. 2-bedroom apartments that cost $1,400 a decade ago now exceed $3,000. Every morning, freeways once packed with commuters are lined with moving trucks heading east. Families are fleeing to Arizona, Nevada, and Texas, anywhere the numbers might work. Schools in outer Los Angeles County report declining enrollments, while inland desert towns like Palmdale and Lancaster have seen record population surges from displaced Angelenos. Yet the exodus isn't just economic, it's emotional. Parents describe a creeping hopelessness, a feeling that no matter how hard they work, they're sliding backward. The average childcare cost in Los Angeles County now surpasses $15,000 a year. Grocery bills have risen more than 25% since the pandemic. And energy costs? Up more than 30% since 2022. The American dream here has become a subscription that keeps auto-renewing at a higher price. Families that once owned homes are now doubling up in rentals or living with relatives in neighboring counties. The sound of moving tape ceiling boxes has replaced the hum of optimism. Still, inside this collapse lies a dangerous illusion that Los Angeles is an exception. But as analysts warn, what's unfolding here is spreading nationally, a widening gap between wages and housing that no middle-class paycheck can bridge. If Los Angeles shows us what happens when paradise becomes unaffordable, the next city reveals what happens when survival itself comes under pressure, a place where even 6-figure incomes can't buy stability anymore. New York City, New York. Since 2020, the city that never sleeps has lost more than 18% of its under 5 population. In other words, the families are leaving. Not tourists, not transplants. Families, the lifeblood of a city's future, are quietly vanishing. For generations, New York represented ambition itself. You moved here to prove you could make it. But in 2025, making it means simply surviving the month. The median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment has surpassed $4,000. Groceries for a family of 4 now average $1,500 a month. Childcare? Nearly $23,000 a year, higher than tuition at many state universities. These numbers don't just describe a cost of living crisis, they explain a demographic one. Parents are packing up not because they stopped loving the city, but because the city stopped loving them back. Brooklyn, once the epicenter of young families, has seen school enrollments fall by more than 10% since the pandemic. Manhattan's family households have declined by nearly 1/4, replaced by transient renters and investors who treat apartments like assets, not homes. Walk through Queens or the Bronx and you'll see the evidence. Playgrounds at half capacity, moving trucks on narrow side streets, shuttered daycare centers turned into luxury pet spas. Even middle-income earners, those pulling in $100,000 a year, are being priced out by the math. Financial analysts now call it the New York squeeze. Mortgage rates hovering near 7% and property taxes that can exceed $13,000 annually have transformed homeownership into a fantasy. Renters aren't safe either. Landlords passed record insurance premiums and maintenance costs straight down to tenants. What used to be a story about gentrification has mutated into something darker, urban, hollowing. The service workers who keep the city alive can't afford to live near the jobs that depend on them. Teachers commute from Pennsylvania. Nurses drive from Connecticut. The rhythm of the city survives, but the families who gave it heart are being pushed miles away. And for those who remain, the sacrifice is relentless. Longer hours, smaller apartments, postponed dreams. The New York skyline still glitters, but the lights are being kept on by people slowly burning out. If New York shows us how the cost of ambition can crush a family, the next city reveals how the cost of technology is erasing entire communities. A place where innovation made life richer for corporations, but impossible for ordinary parents. San Jose, California. The heart of Silicon Valley, once the wealthiest metro in America, is now one of its most unaffordable places to raise a family. Here, the median home price has surged past $1,500,000. To afford that, a household would need to earn more than $300,000 a year. Yet, the median family income is barely half that. The gap between what families make and what it costs to live has become a canyon. Tech built this city's skyline, but it also built its crisis. Every boomtime IPO added another layer of glass to downtown towers and another layer of pressure on the families below them. Between 2020 and 2025, Santa Clara County lost more than 50,000 residents to outward migration. Most weren't unemployed. They were simply priced out. The irony is brutal. The engineers designing tomorrow's apps can't afford to buy homes in the city they're coding from. Two-income households earning six figures are moving an hour inland just to afford a yard. Meanwhile, teachers, nurses, and service workers, the people who keep the ecosystem running, have been pushed clear out of the Bay Area. A three-bedroom apartment here averages $5,200 a month. Childcare for one toddler costs more than $24,000 a year. Gas, groceries, utilities all rank among the nation's highest. Every family budget now reads like a financial stress test. What makes San Jose different is who's leaving. These aren't just low-income residents. Even upper-middle-class families, project managers, software designers, small business owners are fleeing to Idaho, Utah, and Oregon. Local analysts say the family flight is the strongest since the dot-com collapse 2 decades ago. The digital revolution that promised freedom has become a gilded cage, and the fallout is visible everywhere. Half-empty schools, shuttered daycare centers, and downtown coffee shops now serving more venture capitalists than parents. The city that created the world's technology now can't sustain the people who use it. San Jose was once the prototype for the American future. Innovation, opportunity, upward mobility. Now it's a warning label on what happens when progress outpaces humanity. If San Jose shows us how technology can price families out of their own success, the next city reveals what happens when industrial decline collides with rising costs, a place where the economy itself is unraveling faster than families can escape. Chicago, Illinois. Once the heartbeat of America's industry, Chicago is now running on borrowed time and borrowed money. Since 2020, more than 150,000 residents have left the metro area, most of them working-class families chasing cheaper lives across the Midwest. The factories that once built America's rail cars, steel, and machinery are silent shells. And the service economy that replaced them can't carry the cost of living that followed. The median home price in Chicago has climbed past $390,000, while the median household income remains around $80,000. Property taxes average more than 2.3%, among the highest in the nation. For a modest home, that's over $9,000 a year before insurance or maintenance. Combine that with utilities that rose 35% since 2022, and food costs that have surged nearly 28%. And you have a city quietly suffocating under its own weight. Yet, the crisis isn't just economic, it's cultural. The blue-collar neighborhoods that once hummed with factory whistles are fading into memory. In South Chicago, warehouses stand empty beside half-occupied schools. In the western suburbs, you'll find families renting out spare rooms to cover property taxes, or moving in with relatives to keep from losing homes entirely. Chicago isn't alone. Across America's old industrial belt, from Detroit to Milwaukee, nearly 2 million manufacturing jobs have vanished since the early 2000s. And wages in what's left have failed to keep pace with inflation. Chicago sits at the epicenter of this transformation. A city built for production, now priced for speculation. Corporate investors have bought up entire blocks of former working-class housing, converting them into short-term rentals. Average rent for a two-bedroom apartment has reached $2,500, up nearly 50% from 5 years ago. For a city where public sector jobs once provided stability, even police officers and firefighters are reporting financial strain. The result is a new kind of exodus, not one caused by factory closures, but by arithmetic. Families earning what once counted as middle-class wages can no longer afford Chicago's version of making it. The skyline glitters across Lake Michigan, but beneath it lies a city divided by affordability, lines more rigid than any old railroad track. Chicago was built to move freight, to move steel, to move people. Now, it's moving them out. If Chicago reveals how industrial collapse and inflation combine to crush a city's middle class, the next stop shows something even more alarming. A booming Sunbelt metro where prosperity itself is becoming the trap. Houston, Texas. The city that once symbolized limitless opportunity is now showing the dark side of the Sunbelt boom. Over the past decade, Houston added more than 1 million new residents, becoming one of America's fastest-growing metros. Families poured in from California and the Midwest chasing cheaper homes, lower taxes, and abundant jobs. But by 2025, the math that made Houston look affordable has flipped. Median home prices have surged 45% in just 5 years, reaching nearly $380,000. While the average household income has barely risen. Property insurance premiums have exploded by more than 50% since 2022, driven by repeated floods, storms, and billion-dollar weather disasters. Energy costs in the nation's energy capital are up more than 30%. The irony is painful. The city that fuels America can no longer afford to keep its own lights on. Families who moved here for breathing room are finding none. Suburban developments once advertised as affordable luxury are seeing foreclosure spikes. Mortgage delinquencies in Harris County climbed 22% over the past year. The average monthly mortgage payment, once around $1,600, now exceeds $2,500. Houston's growth became its own undoing. The influx of new residents outpaced infrastructure, pushing up rents, traffic, and utility costs. What was supposed to be a safe haven from coastal chaos has become the new front line of economic strain. The city's flood insurance crisis alone is wiping out family budgets, annual premiums, topping $4,000 for modest homes in risk zones. Yet, this collapse feels deceptive, because on the surface, Houston still looks prosperous. Construction cranes crowd the skyline. Corporate relocations continue. But beneath the boom, middle-class families are stretched to the breaking point, a hidden recession unfolding in real time. This is where the national story pivots. What's happening in Houston isn't an isolated cost of living crisis. It's the moment the American promise of affordable migration hits the wall. The Sun Belt that once offered refuge from high-tax states is now bleeding the same families dry. If Chicago showed us the collapse of old industry, Houston shows us the implosion of new prosperity. The trap isn't poverty, it's the illusion of comfort that families can no longer maintain. Because if even the booming cities are breaking, what happens next in the places already on the edge? In our next stop, we head to a coastal paradise where the cost of living has turned paradise itself into punishment. Miami, Florida. A city that once sold the dream of endless sunshine is now drowning in the cost of keeping that dream alive. For decades, Miami was the reward for success. Palm trees, ocean breeze, a house near the water. But by 2025, paradise has turned into punishment for the families still trying to hold on. The average home price now hovers near $650,000, and median rent for a two-bedroom apartment exceeds $3,200. Insurance premiums, once an afterthought, have surged past $7,000 a year for homes near the coast. That figure alone is breaking families. Flood insurance, mandatory for many properties, has doubled since 2022. Some homeowners have seen their policies canceled altogether. In response, state regulators have warned of a coverage crisis as insurers flee the Florida market. 1 in every 5 homeowners here can no longer afford to insure their homes, a number rising faster than the tide itself. And the water keeps coming. King tides now flood Miami streets, even on clear days. Seawall projects meant to defend neighborhoods like Brickell and Miami Beach are years behind schedule and billions over budget. For families in working-class inland areas like Hialeah or Little Havana, that money may as well be another world away. The real estate boom that defined Miami's identity has become its undoing. Foreign investors and second home buyers drove prices higher, while full-time residents were priced out. Schools in Miami-Dade County report enrollment declines for the 3rd straight year, and small businesses are closing under the weight of commercial insurance hikes that have risen over 50% in just 2 years. Families that once fled cold northern winters are now fleeing the cost of paradise to Georgia, North Carolina, even Tennessee, anywhere the air may be less humid and the premiums lower. Local moving companies say out-of-state relocations are up 37% since 2023. Miami's collapse isn't just a local tragedy, it's a warning for every coastal city in America. Analysts estimate that by the early 2030s, nearly 14 million Americans could face coastal insurance defaults or forced relocations. The American coastline, once a symbol of wealth and leisure, is becoming unlivable for the very people who built it. And as the waves inch higher, the dream inches farther away. If Miami shows how nature and economics can conspire to price families out of paradise, the next city reveals what happens when the heartland itself begins to collapse. A place once known for affordability, now suffocating under impossible costs. Cleveland, Ohio. Once called the heartbeat of the heartland, Cleveland was supposed to be the affordable refuge, a city for families escaping the coasts, where hard work still meant stability. But in 2025, even the refuge is collapsing. For years, Cleveland marketed itself as the last affordable big city in America. Home prices were modest, commutes were short, schools were stable, but the pandemic migration changed everything. New arrivals brought higher wages and higher prices. The median home value has jumped 60% since 2020, reaching nearly $250,000. While average household income remains below $55,000, property taxes have climbed 27%, utilities up 30%, and groceries have spiked another 21%. A city once praised for its low cost of living is now outpacing national inflation. The shift has hit hardest where families can least afford it. Cuyahoga County now has one of the nation's highest foreclosure rates, 1 in every 960 homes, double what it was 3 years ago. Mortgage delinquencies have risen nearly 20% in the past 12 months, and rent for a 2-bedroom apartment averages $1,600, up almost half since 2020. For a city built on blue-collar consistency, that rise is catastrophic. Cleveland's comeback dream, tech hubs, lakefront revitalization, remote work expansions, has turned into a trap for its own residents. New downtown condos cater to remote professionals from New York or San Francisco, while longtime families find themselves priced out of the very neighborhoods they rebuilt. Even local manufacturing workers, once the backbone of the Midwest, are facing economic squeeze. The average factory wage in the region, $22 an hour, no longer covers the city's basic family budget. The deeper story isn't just Cleveland. It's the illusion that the Midwest would stay cheap forever. Across states like Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, the average cost of living has surged 35% since 2021. For millions of working families, the move to affordability strategy is collapsing. Mortgage costs, property insurance, and groceries now rival prices in coastal states. What's happening in Cleveland is what economists are calling the second wave of unaffordability. Not driven by speculation, but by survival. Families who fled California and Florida for stability are finding the same financial cliffs in the middle of the map. The heartland has become the new front line of the affordability crisis, and Cleveland is its ground zero. If Cleveland proves that no city is safe from the cost of living spiral, the next place shows how even prosperity itself can't buy security. A city where the American dream is literally running out of time. San Antonio, Texas. In 2025, the cost of raising a family in San Antonio has risen more than 60% since the pandemic, the fastest increase of any major city in Texas. For years, San Antonio was the quiet success story of the South. Low-cost living, strong jobs, a city where prosperity felt within reach. Families from across Texas and beyond came here for stability, for a home they could afford and a life they could build. But that promise is vanishing fast. Today, the average family earning $85,000 a year spends nearly 63% of their income on essentials, housing, groceries, transportation, and insurance. The median home price has jumped to $350,000, nearly double what it was just 5 years ago. Rents are up more than 50%, and grocery prices have climbed 29% since 2021. What was once Texas's most affordable big city is now one of its most financially fragile. Even prosperity can't buy security here anymore. Part of the collapse stems from the very boom that made San Antonio appealing. Rapid population growth, nearly 120,000 new residents since 2020, has overwhelmed housing supply, public infrastructure, and schools. Construction can't keep pace, and property taxes are skyrocketing to fund expansion. The result? Middle-income families squeezed by rising costs on all sides. Energy costs tell the same story. Despite being in one of the nation's leading energy-producing states, local utility bills have jumped 31% in 2 years. Insurance premiums for flood and storm protection, once under $1,000 a year, now average $2,600. And after the catastrophic freeze of 2021, insurers have classified large parts of Bexar County as high risk, doubling rates again in 2024. It's a mirror of the American paradox. The cities that grew fastest are now collapsing hardest. According to housing economists, Texas's affordability advantage has vanished. The average mortgage payment statewide has doubled since 2019, erasing the single biggest reason people moved here. In San Antonio, once hailed as recession-proof, more than 20% of households now report being behind on at least one monthly payment. Families who thought they had escaped the national crisis are discovering they simply relocated into its next phase. And as they pack up once again to Oklahoma, Arkansas, or anywhere the numbers might work, San Antonio joins the growing list of cities where comfort has become a casualty. If San Antonio shows how prosperity can no longer buy safety, the next city reveals how debt itself is becoming the new disaster. A place where collapse doesn't just happen in homes, but in entire economies. Bakersfield, California. Household debt in Bakersfield has surged more than 70% since 2020, the sharpest increase of any metro in the western United States. For decades, Bakersfield was the blue-collar safety valve of California: cheaper homes, steady oil and agriculture jobs, and a slower pace of life far from the coastal chaos. But in 2025, that safety valve has broken. The families who came here to live debt-free are now buried under it. The median household income sits around $65,000, yet the average household debt load, including mortgages, car loans, and credit cards, has surpassed $110,000. The math doesn't work anymore. A starter home that sold for $240,000 5 years ago now costs nearly $400,000. Property taxes are up 33%, and homeowners insurance has jumped 40% amid rising wildfire risks. The oil fields that once anchored the local economy have been shrinking for years, and automation is eating what's left of the agricultural workforce. Bakersfield's unemployment rate, once among California's lowest, has climbed back above 8%. That means more families leaning on credit just to stay afloat. You see it everywhere: in payday loan storefronts on Chester Avenue, in eviction notices taped to duplex doors, in families lining up at gas stations to pay utility bills with cash advances. Even among those who own homes, mortgage delinquencies have doubled since 2023. For the first time, the Federal Reserve lists Bakersfield as a high-risk consumer debt region. Across America, this is the new face of collapse. Not abandoned cities, but indebted ones. Nationwide household debt has topped $17 trillion for the first time in history, and mid-income metros like Bakersfield are driving the increase. Every credit card swipe, every deferred payment, every auto loan extension adds weight to a system already cracking. For families here, the dream of ownership has turned into a lifetime of payments. The irony? Most are still technically middle class. They just can't breathe. Bakersfield isn't dying from job loss or crime. It's dying from compound interest, the quiet disaster hiding inside every bill. If Bakersfield shows how debt can quietly destroy an entire city from within, the final stop takes us to a place where collapse isn't creeping anymore. It's already here. A coastal town that has reached the end of the American affordability line, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Here, the collapse isn't coming, it's already happened. Once the glittering capital of America's boardwalk dreams, Atlantic City now holds the title of one of the most financially distressed cities in the nation. Since 2020, its population has fallen by more than 10%, median household income sits below $45,000, and nearly 1 in every 4 residents lives below the poverty line. Homes that once sold for $300,000 can now be found for barely half that. Property tax rates hover above 3%, among the highest in the country, while municipal debt exceeds $500 million. The city's credit rating was downgraded twice in 2 years. Even its casinos, the lifeblood of the local economy, are closing floors and cutting staff as tourism dries up. For the families who remain, the illusion of recovery has faded. School districts face chronic budget deficits, police and sanitation departments operate on emergency extensions, and abandoned hotels tower like empty monuments to an economy that forgot how to sustain itself. Atlantic City isn't fighting to stay prosperous anymore, it's fighting to stay functional. The cost of living here has outpaced local wages for 6 straight years. Groceries are up 27% since 2022. Energy bills average 25% higher than the national mean. And, for the first time, more than half of all mortgages in the city are considered at risk. Analysts call it the warning bell of coastal collapse. Across America, hundreds of smaller cities now share Atlantic City's numbers: rising debt, shrinking tax bases, and families fleeing faster than they can be replaced. What began as isolated decline is becoming systemic erosion. The American city model itself is breaking. Here, by the gray Atlantic surf, the story that began with hope ends in silence. The bright lights that once promised fortune now flicker over shuttered storefronts. Families who moved here for opportunity are leaving in the middle of the night, not because they want to, but because they have to. Atlantic City is no longer a warning. It's a mirror. Because if even the symbols of American optimism have fallen this far, what does that say about what comes next? In the end, this isn't just about 10 cities. It's about a country still trying to convince itself the dream can be rebuilt. The story doesn't end in Atlantic City. Because what we've seen across these 10 cities isn't just decline, it's the pattern of a nation unraveling from within. Families once chasing opportunity are now chasing exits. The middle class that built America is bleeding out one paycheck at a time. From Los Angeles to the Jersey Shore, every dream built on stability is cracking under the same weight, debt, inflation, and the cost of survival. But if this is where the collapse begins, it's not where it ends. In our next chapter, we uncover the warning signs spreading nationwide and what happens when the system itself can no longer hold. Watch the next video below.